Hey everybody, welcome back to Alum House Sound. My name is Dave. In today's video, we're going to dive into another one of your scenes for our live stream setup. All right, well, welcome back to Alum House Sound. Today we're going to dive into a scene from one of you all, one of my subscribers. They reached out not too long ago and said, hey, we're trying to get a secondary X32 setup for our live stream. We have two dedicated consoles, one for front of house and one for the stream, and the stream just doesn't sound like where we think it can be. Can you help? And so I've worked with them over the past couple weeks to make sure that we've reviewed their scene, like they were able to send me the scene files. I could look at things and just kind of do any basic triage that I might be able to find. But I want to take a look now because we've got some recorded multi-tracks. Now the tracks are recorded off the front of house console. So they hit the front of house console and then they go right out to the preamp because that is going to determine the signal coming into their live stream console. So they've got a full console dedicated for their live stream. So we should be able to get a pretty nice sound, pretty refined sound, and a good broadcast level coming out of this console with some effects, with some DCA set up so that they can easily manage and run that live stream from the console. And I do know that the downside is that their live stream console is just off stage. So I believe that they're in a borrowed venue right now, maybe in the high school auditorium, and just off the stage they've got a little side room, and that's where their console is set up. So they're really close to the stage, which means they're going to be getting some bleed over from their from their subwoofers and their PA in the room. And they've got some closed back headphones, which is what we're going to be mixing on here. But we've also got the studio monitors as well. So I've tossed the X32 back up here, taking a break from a different series. But we've got the X32 back up here. But anyway, enough talking. We're going to get the scene loaded up on that console. We'll get the tracks loaded up in my DAW, which is PreSonus Studio One Pro. And we'll put the two together, make some magic happen. All right, let's go. All right, so to get started, we've opened up Studio One, and I'm just going to start a new session. So I'm going to create a new song. It's going to be an empty song, which is just going to show you from top to bottom what I'm going to do. This is called Decibel Church, and today's date I'm going to toss in there. It's not September anymore. It's October. All right, so we've got a blank canvas here. We can go ahead and hide the stuff on the right. And what I need to do now is locate my tracks and drag them all in. So I've come over here. I've got all of my tracks. I'm just going to drag them and drop them right there. And it's going to take a second and import those. It'll build a preview, and it usually works from the bottom up. But this is going to be obviously just kind of default settings here to start out with. We're going to have to go in once this preview is done. I'm going to save this, and then we're going to go in and do our routing. Now keep in mind, we're going to be sending this routing for one in to one out. So we're going to set up all 32 ins and outs, be what we do to send it back into the console with our sub settings. So we'll run through this real fast. I might do a time lapse, but I know some people are interested in seeing this from the ground up. So I'm going to come in here. Everybody likes all the fancy colors. I just like it being one color. So I'm going to select them all. Then I can make them all one color like that. And now we have, if we look at it, all the tracks are just the same color. So at this point, we've got our tracks loaded, and what we're going to do is just save this. We've changed the color, and we're going to come back to this once we're connected to the console. The next thing I'm going to do is pull up X32-Edit, and we're going to load the scene. So I don't know what's loaded here, but I'm going to go ahead and come over here and hit Load Scene. These guys sent me their front of house console as well as their live stream console. So I'm just going to open up the live stream console. And we're going to take a quick peek through. I do remember some of the things that we cleaned up the other day. I'm just going to have to redo it here. But notice how they're running two DCAs. What they did is they took their front of house scene and they just duplicated it onto their live console. So when we look at buses as an example, they've got in-ear monitor buses and mixes and stuff set up and subs and front fills, and they don't need any of that stuff because this entire console is dedicated to live stream. I know, it sounds pretty amazing, doesn't it? So what we're going to do is we're going to come up here and we're going to kind of clean all this stuff up. When I look at my DCAs on the right, here I'll hide this. When I look at DCAs on the right here, I've got Vox, that's interesting, but I've got vocals as well. That seems like we're doubling up. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. We're going to take this off and just run these on the Vox group. These are vocals. Cues, we're not going to need cues at all, so we're going to just clear this out and what color should we make it? We'll just make it black for right now. Tracks, they're going to need tracks. They've got acoustic guitar here. Also, again, notice that they have, for some reason, they've got tracks on keyboard DCA, but they've also got it on vocal DCA. I think that's just an issue. Let's see here. Acoustic guitar is on the guitar DCA, DCA2. That's good. So they've got a couple guitars set up here. We'll leave those all on DCA. This is Countdown. This is something that they did not need in their live stream board. So we're going to see if I can not mistype there. There we go. We're going to remove that, just kind of clean that out. We're going to go through in a minute too and see how we've got all of these sends. We're going to kind of clear out all the sends. We're going to clear out any EQs because we're just going to start from the ground up, EQ and compress everything just in a fresh way. All right, we got electric guitar here. We've got bass guitar. We have keyboard, and so that's on the keys DCA. That's good. Click, they do not need click in their live streaming console, so we'll remove that. They've got announcement, and then they've got their pastor's mic here. The next layer, we've got drums. If I remember right, this facility has an electric drum kit, but it's got all the individual outs, so that's pretty sweet. And I think they were talking about, because they're in a barred facility, they're using the electric drums, they would like to move to acoustic drums later. So at least they have everything here and kind of a great setup going. They've got this drum track here. I'm not sure why that's there, but I'm just going to leave it be. They've also got an ambient mic set up over here on input 32, so that's cool. So when we look at this now on the right hand side, if I go over here to all of my DCAs, we're going to remove this one, and let's just go to that gray setup that they had there. There we go. And so they've got DCA, they got a couple extra DCAs. That's going to be nice depending on how we want to route some of their workflow. If I look at auxiliaries, we're not going to need a laptop coming in, so we can get rid of that. So we'll make that here and there. We'll take that off of that DCA. We're even going to go as far as to unlink this. So if I select and go up to channel, I can unlink, and now I'm good to go there. USB, that's just the standard input on the front of the board. We'll leave that there. Now, we'll get into some effects and some, whatever the needs are later on, but they've got a reverb set up here, a delay, it looks like. We'll have to look at their effects and see what's needed, but these are going to stay linked. They're going to stay there. Okay, so it looks like they've got some listings over here because these are the buses that send into those effects returns. So we've got a effects reverb, we've got a delay, we've got a plate verb, and then distort. That sounds exciting. Maybe they're running their bass guitar into the distort. That'd be kind of cool. Or vocals, that would be super top notch. One of the things I see here too, as I just clicked on this, we got the mono center channel as well as left and right. Because this board is just going to be a stereo output, we don't need the mono center channel. So these are some things we can do next, which is going to be coming back to our inputs. We're going to open up the side view, and we're going to just kind of clear out all of this stuff here. I wish that I could select all channels and just drop them all down at one time, Can't do that. All right, so we've got the mono center channel cleared out. The next thing that I would do is come through on these monitors and adjust these as well. You've got two options that you can do here. You can do the way that I'm doing, where I select one monitor and just clear everything down. I'm probably going to end up doing this on the console because it's so easy just to swipe your hand down on everything after you're in Sends on Fader. But another option that you could do here is just select an input and then come up here and we can just turn these all the way down. So if you're using like an X32 rack, you can just kind of do it this way, where you can turn these all down here, and that's gonna get the job done. But again, for me, it's a whole lot easier just to select the console, on the console, select the bus, go to Sends on Fader, just dump the faders all down at one time. So we'll deal with that later on. I am gonna rename these though. So I'm gonna rename the buses. So let's go down here to the bus matrix layer, and we can just kind of come up with a general look and feel here. And we're going to do some renaming of these guys as well. So in-ear 1, ear 2, in-ear 3. Let's just do this as... Actually, we should be able to just remove it and it'll automatically go to bus. There we go. They've got a pretty cool setup. I mean, they've got seemingly 8 in-ears. They're running 2 consoles. They got a broadcast mix, front fills. That's some pretty sweet gear they're running. A pretty good setup. We're going to go ahead and select this again. Go ahead and unlink this. What my assumption is that we'll end up with a vocal bus, a band bus, and a drum bus, so that we can run this as kind of secondary levels of compression and EQing, really just to keep that broadcast mix in mind and make it easier on the mix engineer that's going to be running everything. Now, if you notice up here, we've got these little icons as well, and that's kind of connected because it was an in-ear monitor. We can come up here, right click, and that gives us the ability to change that icon there. This isn't going to make or break the sound that comes out of your console, but from a cleanliness perspective, this is just something I like to do. I love being consistent, having all my stuff working well, and being even across the board. All right, so we'll come back up here. One of the other things I noticed is that if I go back to the main left and right here, that the naming of the output, or this fader, is actually output right, which is not right. This is just the main bus. So we're just going to call it LR by going back to the factory setting, and that's going to be good enough for right now. They've got mute groups as well, and we'll kind of explore more of that when we get in here to see how they're running their mutes. It looks like vocals are on 1. If I click on something else down here, maybe everything is on 1. I don't know. We're going to clean those things up as well in the mute groups as we go channel by channel. But the next thing that I want to do is work on cleaning out effects and some EQ. So I see Eli here as this first input. We've got an effect on that, and so we can figure out by going to effects. Let's see here. We're going to go 5 through 8. All right, and it looks like they've got a de-esser. So we'll leave the de-esser there. We may need it. We may not need it. We're just going to turn that off for right now. No harm in leaving it there, but we'll go ahead and set this to off and come up here and go off. And that's going to be just a way to clean that up. Next thing I'm going to do is come into the EQ, and I'm just going to hit the reset button and reset all of the EQ. I'm going to turn off the low cut, and I'm going to come to the compressor and turn the compressor off as well. Now, I have some standard things that I do when I run vocals. We'll talk through that when we're actually on the console mixing, because we want to see how it works in this environment. So I'm going to do a couple more bits and pieces of punching around here, and then I'll come back in just a second before we export this to the thumb drive. All right, so one of the things I really like to do and have on hand is saving a setting for a channel, which is kind of a clear base to work with. So if you look at this channel, I'm going to come in and deselect mono center channel. I'm going to turn all my buses down. And what I've done is I've gone through on the config side. I set the low cut right around 100 Hertz, which is kind of your basic standard starting place. The gate, I turn that off and down. The compressor, I turn that off and turn the threshold all the way up so it's not compressing. The EQ, I've cleared out the EQ. Again, our sends are not going anywhere. And so I just kind of set this up as a blank thing, and then we're going to save it into the library. So I'm going to click on library. I'm always going to scroll to the bottom. And again, this is on the channel side. So I'm going to scroll to the bottom, and what I'm going to do is just come down here and pick a place, let's say 90. I'll hit save, and I want to make sure that we're recalling the head amp and the scribble strip and all that stuff. So I'm going to save this, and I'm just going to call it blank channel. And I'll hit OK. And that way, what I can do next is when we get down here to say channel 10, which is also a blank one, I can just come in and I can load that. So I can select blank channel, I hit load, hit OK. And now if we look at channel 10, it's set up just the same way. So this is going to save us a little bit of time. Obviously, you could do this with your vocals. If you had like a generic EQ and compression setup that you just wanted to put across different vocals as a starting place, you can remove the head amp gain and the scribble strip, and you could just save these settings as a preset, and then you could load that in. So that's a pretty sweet way to use some of these features inside the console. So I'm going to finish this up and hit up all of these kind of blank channels that we don't need, just so that they look uniform and consistent, and then we'll come right back. All right, so we have just finished setting up all of our blank channels with this consistent look and feel. One of the things you'll notice though, see how this one you can see where it says channel 5, channel 10, channel 14, but when we come down here we have some blank channel scribble strips. Why is that, you ask? Why, when we look up here, do we see the gray, but down here we don't see anything? And that's because there's no input selected. So this is channel 26. When I come to the config area, I can see that my source is set to off. So if I had this set to 26, which would be down here, now it's going to show up, and that's how we could keep moving. So these are just turned off in terms of the source. And I'm just going to set that back to how it was because it was off for a reason. We don't need it. But that's one thing you might want to notice if you're troubleshooting and you're like, I keep pasting this library scene. Why is it not showing up? Make sure that you've got a source selected if that's what you need to have in your setup. All right, well, the next thing for me to do, I'm going to look at their effects. And what I'm going to do is set up one effect for the whole band. For everybody, that's just going to be a reverb. That's going to be like a hall verb. Usually I use the vintage verb. And then I'm also going to set up a delay for our vocals so that when they're singing, we can add a little extra depth to their vocal. Now I'm just going to do those two to start out with. There's a plate verb option. If you've ever watched my video, I can put it up here as well as in the description. This is the scene. This video walks through the scene that I did when I had the luxury of having a full console for myself. And I took the fab setup of running 3 reverbs on the vocals, and one of those was also used for the full band, and then a delay for vocals as well. But we're not doing that here. We're just going to start out real basic, and we'll add and augment things as we get going. So effects, I'm going to come up and I'm going to look, and we've got the vintage verb set up here on effects 1. That's great. And the delay plus chamber is on 2, so that's going to be good. Now what I notice, bus 1 is what's feeding this verb, so we're going to change that. We want that to be bus 13, which is kind of the stock setup. Bus 13, there we go. So 13, 14, 15, and 16. I am curious though. I want to see what they were sending into this guitar amp rack. So we're going to click on Effects Distort and see what instruments. Oh, acoustic guitar. They were running acoustic guitar into that. That's cool. That's exciting. I'm going to turn that down for right now. And again, we're just going to leave that one there. We'll use the vintage verb. So I'm going to come in here and check my settings. A 1.7 second. That's fine. It's a good little space to create. I'm not going to change anything more about that right now until we get onto the board. And then we'll look here. Let's see. So this just really looks like the stock setting, and that's fine too. We'll set up the tap point to be a button on their assign keys, but we'll get there as well once we get in. So we're going to leave these other two here. We're untouched on those. Just start out with the two effects and see how far that takes us. Well, let's go ahead and put this on a thumb drive, stick this scene on the board, and we'll get rolling with some tracks and then get the board fired up and get you guys over top of the console. All right, so next step here, we've got the scene put onto our thumb drive, loaded up the X32. We're just going to toss this in up here, and then we'll hit the scenes button, the view button for scenes. And then we can go to load settings where it says USB drive. So I'm going to load, I'm going to select that. Then I can pick my scene. So I'll go down here and pick the scene that I created in X32-Edit. I select it. It says, do you want to really load this? I say confirm. And then there we go. So now that scene that we did in the X32-Edit is here on the computer. Obviously, if you're networked in, you can just push that and it would be live, you know, to the console. But we've got that loaded in, so I'm going to go ahead and just pull this thumb drive out. We'll set this thing aside, and we're off to the races now with this. So the first thing I wanted to do with this was mix buses. So I'm going to come over here to the right side. I'm going to select bus 1, and I'm going to hit Sends on Fader. And then now I can just go like this, and we can kind of pull everything down through all of these inputs, make sure that our effects and our buses and everything are down. And go to bus 2, and we can just kind of rinse and repeat. We're just going to clean this all up real fast and just make sure that everything is dumped down. And so we're going to repeat this because they had a bunch of monitors. We're just going to go ahead and repeat this across all of these first handful of buses, the first 8. All right, so that took us just a second or two. We've got that all done. I also want to go in and take care of these effects buses. So I'm going to bring these effects sends up to 0, up to unity. And we're not using the 4th one, but we're going to bring it up. And I'm just going to go ahead and hit select this, and we're just going to go ahead and make sure that these are all cleared out as well. All right, so at this point, all of those buses have been kind of removed and deleted. Now you can see here we've got compression compressor showing on bus 9 and 10. I don't know what's going into those, so I'm going to take a second and just kind of clean that stuff up as well. Looks like we still had some mix going into those. That might have been a live stream bus or something else. So we're just going to go ahead and clean all this up. We'll turn off EQ and compression. We can turn off main left right bus, mono bus. Same thing here. So this to me is a little bit cleaner. I love how this feels already. I'm going to go ahead and save this up here in our scenes so we can start to craft this new scene, and then we'll get the tracks coming in and we can start to really listen and generate what we want out of this console scene for our live stream. One thing I wanted to point out as I'm saving this scene here right now, I've went ahead and entered the name that I want, but don't miss out on this first encoder. You can switch from name to note, and that allows you to put in this case, I'm going to put in a date. So I can come in here and put the date in, but you could add notes, you know, whether it's a different venue or you know, whatever you want as a note. Obviously you're limited on characters, but anyway, don't miss out on the feature that allows you to put a note with your scene name, and that shows up here as well as in X32-Edit. All right, so the next thing I want to do is look at routing. The routing in this case, we want to kind of clean up as well. When I looked at the routing, they had two different setups. So record right now is set to come from the first 16 are coming from AES-50A. The second 16 are coming from AES-50B. Now, record side is what you're normally going to live in. And so in this case, I think everything is going to come in across AES-50A in their environment. So we're just going to go ahead and switch this to be 1 to 8, 9 to 16, 17 to 24, and then 25 to 32. And that should bring the inputs into the desk across those AES-50 channels. But when I go to play, then we need this to be set up for card. And that's so that we can do our sound check right now. So card 1 to 8, 9 to 16, 17 to 24, and our 25 to 32. So now we're going to set the inputs from the DAW to come in across the card 1 through 32, and that should map with this setup now. All right, so we're taking a look at the DAW now. Again, this is Studio One Pro. And I'm going to, we've got our tracks here. We did that already. I'm going to come up to Song and go to Song Setup. So then I can come in here and find XUSB and we'll hit OK. Now, one thing to note, if you've got a dedicated console that's taking its internal clock source from a different console, you got to change your clock source to be internal so that it will show up in your DAW. So I know a lot of people talk about not being able to multi-track, record, or do a virtual sound check on their front of house console, and that's because you got to change the clock source in the console. Open back up the tracks here. So we've got our song setup, we've got our XUSB, and now what I can do is come into the audio I/O, and I'm going to remove these. All of these inputs. The inputs aren't quite as important right now, but we can still go ahead and just add 32 of these. And we can apply those inputs, and so that way they're already mapped one-to-one input to output. Same thing here, I'm going to turn off the left and right, and then I can add 32 mono groups. All right, so we've got those. We can hit apply. And so now we have the 32 sub outs. And the next thing to do is we're going to bring up our mix window. I tend to close all this stuff over here on the left, and I want to make this expand by pushing a little button there, and then I can come into my send. And my send, I'm going to do sub 1, but this is right now post fader send, and it's set up for plus 6 dB on the volume out. So when I click on this, I want to come up and go to 0 for my volume up in my send level, and then I can click this little icon that you can't see, but it changes it to pre-fader. So that no matter what happens with these faders, if I'm mousing around or doing anything, then the output, just like typical pre-fader and post-fader, that will not be impacted, sending the signal to my console. So I'm going to send the sub 1, then I can drag this over, go to sub 2, and so on and so forth. I'm going to spare you from watching this, so I'll be back in just a minute. All right, there's 32. So all of our outputs are mapped, so I can trim this down and even make this small if I want to, and then just get rid of this mix window altogether. And then we've just got tracks here. I'm going to shrink this as well so that I can kind of see where the bulk of the material is. And I'm pretty sure this was a rehearsal, not a service, and that's fine. So I can find a patch in here where I've got a lot of activity, a lot of instruments playing, and I think I'm just going to set a loop in here. I have no idea what we're going to get. I'm just going to put a loop right there. If I right click, I can activate the loop, or I can go down here at the bottom and hit the loop. And then here I hit play, and so now we have audio, and that audio should be coming back through to the console, if we've got our settings right. All right, so here we are back at the console, and we've got our card inputs coming in. So we're on the play side versus the record side. Remember, the record side is set to AES50A, and we're coming in from the play side. So we can see some inputs here. Remember, if I push channel on this smaller platform, if I push channels 1 through 8 and 9 through 16, it will send 9 to 16 over on this side, which gives us the ability to see 16 channels. That's pretty nice. We're not dealing with DCAs yet anyway, and it gives us a bigger platform to see all of our, in this case, inputs 1 through 16. Then I can go 17 to 32, which is where the drums are coming in. So that's going to give us the ability to see all 16 channels, similar to the full console, but in this compact platform. And I think what we're going to do is pause here with this. We're at a great spot to take the next steps of starting to mix, starting to blend, starting to listen to our inputs, see what we get. And I think we're going to go ahead and come up here and just save what we've got, just to make sure that we are good to go. So while this isn't truly start to finish, I think we're going to split this up into two different parts. So this video is kind of getting the groundwork in X32-Edit, getting the tracks set up in our DAW, making sure that we have everything loaded on the console. We've now got our tracks going into the console. We are ready to start mixing, doing our virtual sound check, doing our blending, and really do the hard work of getting this console set up to be successful for our live stream. But I think we're going to pause here. The next one, we'll dive right back in where we left off here, and we're going to start listening to our inputs and building a mix. So if you've got questions, leave those down in the comment section below. I'm always answering questions. And if you'd like to start a conversation outside of YouTube, I'll put the website here, and you can go fill out the contact card on my website. That's a way to get me outside of YouTube, and we can really start to dive into things maybe like this for you and your venue and your group. If you're interested in finding out some of the products I use, there's an Amazon link down in the description that goes to my Amazon shop. And the only last thing to do is hit the most important button, which is the thumbs up button. Go ahead and give this video a like. Make sure you're subscribed so you can catch the next one that comes out after this one. And as always, go make some great music. We'll catch you guys next time. Peace.